Chainbreaker, Jamie Blosser, Hallie Burt, Miguel Acosta, Jay Henneke, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong and he can correct me later. Who else am I missing, Rich, before we get started?
I have a list. I was going through it now. I'm just, I'm letting them in, but it takes them a minute to accept it.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. It is 5:01. Let's go ahead and call the Quality of Life meeting for March 2nd to order. You know, it is not on the agenda, but I would like to take a moment of silence to recognize the lives that were lost today. A member of our Santa Fe police force, as well as a resident. So before we get started, if everybody could just take a moment of silence to recognize this tragedy that happened today. And thank you all so much. And our hearts and prayers go out to their families and loved ones and our entire community. Ms. Martin, can I please get a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Chair Cassette,
I am here.
Councilor Villarreal,
Present.
Councilor Garcia, Lee Garcia,
I'm here.
Councilor Michael Garcia.
Present.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the record, Councilor Amanda Chavez is excused today. Next, moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff?
There are no changes, Counselor.
Thank you. Any changes from the committee? And if not, can I please get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I had a motion from Councilwoman Villarreal and a second from Councilor Lee Garcia. If I could please get a roll call.
Yes. Chair Cassette,
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councilor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. On to approval of the consent. Are there items that members would like to be pulled off to discuss? Councilor Michael Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to pull item E, F, and P.
Any others? Councilor Lee Garcia.
I'd like to pull item C just for discussion.
Any others? And then I will go ahead and pull item K as part of a follow-up discussion from finance the other night. And can I get a motion to approve as amended?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
A motion from Councilwoman Villarreal, a second from Councilor Michael Garcia. Ms. Martin, can I please get a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Chair Cassette,
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councilor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 5, approval of the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve. First are the minutes from February 2nd, Quality of Life Committee. Are there any changes from staff? Any changes from the committee?
No changes.
And can I go ahead and have a motion?
Move to approve. Lee Garcia.
In a second. Thank you. Motions from the Garcia squared. Lee with the first, with the second. And can I please get a roll call?
Yes, Chair Cassette,
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councilor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. And then moving on to the minutes from February 16th. Are there any changes from staff?
Madam Chair, no changes from the director.
Any changes from committee? And if not, can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
And can I please get a roll call?
Yes, Chair Cassette,
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal, Councilor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. Item 6, presentations. We have one presentation today. It's a Midtown Progress Report, Community Development Department presentation. We have Rich Brown here as well as a number of other guests. And Rich, I will hand it over to you to tell us who we will be hearing from today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening to the rest of the council and other invited members. I'm going to turn this over to Director Alexandra Ladd, who is going to lead the community engagement process. I would like to ask Alex if he could let in Michael Pride, who's in the attendee box. She will be part of this presentation today. So I'm looking for Ms. Ladd, but she will start us off. Oh, there she is.
I'm here.
So Ms. Ladd, Director Ladd, if you could start off the presentation, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Sorry, one moment before Alexandra gets started. Can everybody who is not speaking be sure to mute? We do have some feedback happening. Thank you.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the committee, members of the public, we were in front of you, how many weeks ago was that? Not that long ago, with the Midtown Engagement Partners. They were presenting some of the initial reactions from the public and talking about some of the public engagement events that they had led and developed and designed, working hand in hand with UNM's Design, Planning, and Assistance Center. Tonight, we're going to hear some preliminary findings from the data and give you sort of a preview of where the guidances are going to head, the general directions for some of the initial thoughts and analysis on what the members of the public have to say about Midtown. So with that, I will turn it over to the Midtown Engagement Partner team. Lots of awesome folks here tonight, and they can talk more in detail about some of the work that's being done.
Thank you so much, Alexandra, Rich Brown, and counselors, Chair Cassett. I'm still learning the protocols, so thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you again today. My name is Michael Pride. I am co-director of the Design and Planning Assistance Center at UNM, and we are the public engagement consultants to the city for the Midtown project. And before we start, we have slides, of course. As you know, I'd like to briefly introduce everybody here that is part of the team. And I'll just call out your names and then you can introduce yourselves and your organization. I'll start with Alma Rivera.
Hi, good evening, Chairwoman and counselors. My name is Alma Rivera. I'm representing Earth Care this evening. Earth Care works with families and we do leadership development here in Santa Fe. We have a membership base of about 4,000 members. And specifically to the Midtown project, we were able to engage about 1,800 students in the survey process. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Alma. Next to Jay Henneke.
Thank you, Michael. And yes, Henneke, so you hit it right on before Chair Cassett. Yeah, thank you. So Jay Henneke, Santa Fe Youth Works. We do workforce development, case management, GED programs, and other things such as this when they contribute to the community. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Jay. Karen Buller.
Hi, I'm Karen Buller. I'm with the Santa Fe Indigenous Center. We serve the 10,000 Native Americans that live in Santa Fe.
Thank you. Maria Sanchez Tucker.
Good evening, Madam Chair and counselors. Nice to be with you this evening. I'm Maria Sanchez Tucker. I am the Community Services Director for the City of Santa Fe, but tonight I'm here representing the Friends of the Library. The Friends of the Santa Fe Public Library are the advocacy and fundraising arm that supports the public library in Santa Fe. And through both the public library's efforts and the Friends of the Library, we're able to engage the public in conversations and engagement about the Midtown project. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Jamie Blosser.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Blosser with the Santa Fe Art Institute. We connect local, national, and international artists with social issues. And as you probably all know by now, we are one of the few organizations still on the Midtown site. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Tomás Rivera.
Hello, Chair and committee members. I'm Tomas Rivera with Chainbreaker Collective here in Santa Fe. I'm one of two of us here. Kathy, it looks like Kathy's camera permissions are off, but she will be the one that presenting and representing the organization, but I'm here for support and questions if there are any.
Thank you, Tomas. I see Kathy. Kathy, are you able to unmute at least?
Yes. Hello, good afternoon. Chairperson Cassett and members of the committee. I will be doing some of the presentation. As mentioned, I am here representing Chainbreaker Collective, one of the Midtown engagement partners.
Thank you, Kathy. And Miguel Acosta.
Sorry, it took me a moment to unmute. Madam Chair, members of the council, Miguel Acosta with Earth Care, and I'll be here in support of our team efforts today. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. And Hallie Burt.
Hi, my name's Hallie, and I'm part of the UNM DPAC team, here to show support for the project and help answer questions about the guidance.
Thank you so much, everyone. As you can see, we have a large and diverse set of partners that have organizations have become the Midtown engagement partners to embark on this really kind of landmark process for the city of Santa Fe. You know that because we talked about it before, but we just want to present our preliminary findings and guidance. We're really moving toward our 90% report that we'll be submitting next week. So these say preliminary findings and guidance, but we're pretty far down the road. Again, this is just a reminder of who all has been working together to make sure that this engagement process is robust, it is diverse, that it reaches into the far corners of Santa Fe's communities in ways that, in multiple different ways. And many of these organizations are represented here this evening. Just to recall a couple of highlights, the big public events that we hosted last fall, the block party in October and the Pozolada in December, together alone it attracted 1,500 attendees, and at least about half of those completed surveys for us. And of course, on the left, you see the kind of unusual, hopefully unprecedented and not repeated challenges that provide the context for this engagement, but particularly all the closures, distancing that came with the global coronavirus pandemic that limited in-person events. In general, language access and managing that to ensure that both English and Spanish speakers and others felt very welcome and invited and comfortable to participate. And then, of course, with all of the remote and virtual gatherings, we see some of the digital divide that has been one of the, I won't say highlights, but has really marked the last 2 years. And then the ongoing question of trust within our community, and especially between, between institutions like UNM and community advocates and all government structures. So But these things we think we have helped to close the divide on and move closer to collaboration and partnership that would be sustainable beyond this process. You remember we in our surveys, which were probably the most consistent and substantive way that people provided feedback, we asked both qualitative and quantitative questions in Spanish and in English, online and on paper. And here's just another snapshot of how deeply we were able to reach into Santa Fe's communities. With over 2,000 surveys collected, over 40% of those respondents rent rather than own their homes, and almost half were born here, lived here all their lives, or at least 20 years in Santa Fe, and 2/3 of all respondents report an income that is below the area median. You see a high representation of youth and a significant representation of Native and Indigenous persons, as well as pretty close to the total representing the city's demographic population identified as Hispanic, Latino, or Latinx, and over 300 surveys completed in Spanish. And to go back to the context of this engagement, and this is a slide you've seen many times from Daniel Hernandez, and the overall structure of the reports, the engagement, the questions that we're asking people to respond to about the multiple and overlapping ways that and factors that contribute to overall sustainable and equitable development at Midtown. So where we are, we have a report, as I mentioned, that we're submitting tomorrow. The overall structure will include some background about where and when we're working, those contextual factors, and some of the history of engagement on this project. And then really about this process, which we're really charting a new path and really experimenting, trying to be deeply collaborative, community-driven engagement. And then the findings and guidance that we'll share tonight, and then the lessons learned from this kind of engagement that might be replicated or a model for future public engagement in Santa Fe. And with that, I'm going to, let's see, I think I have one more. Yeah, so in a maybe clumsy attempt to try to capture, probably over 15,000 different comments collected over a 2 or 3 month period. Residents want a Midtown that is local, that is secure by its affordability and the protection from displacement, and really provides a lot of access, that is green, sustainable, healthy, renewable, and resilient, that is equitable, really prioritizing those who have fewer resources and opportunities and feel left out, that is health promoting by design, and that is community driven. We got so many comments about community voice or mechanisms that that feature a high level of community control or community voice in decision making, and affordable across every kind of program type, every kind of space, from housing to healthcare, and that's inclusive of youth, families, elderly, the unsheltered, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and LGBTQ persons, et cetera, et cetera. And then just to give you a peek, what we're calling guidance, you might be more familiar with the term of recommendations, but we really see it as, setting goals and characteristics for the development that would provide community benefits and really reflect community input. So then that rationale is drawn from that input, the context, historical, current, and political context of Santa Fe, and other kinds of evidence, maybe from the field, and then identifying cases in practice really examples of promising policy or practice from Santa Fe, from New Mexico, or elsewhere. So the guidance really falls into 4 categories of an approach to development, a vision for what this place would be like as it develops, and certainly years from now. In general, really support for local communities, and then for local community, and then life, what is life like at Midtown? And with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy Garcia to review the initial guidance. Yes, there are more we get more specific in the document, but this is probably an appropriate level for tonight and in this setting. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My apologies. It appears I still don't have video permissions, but as long as folks can hear me, I think it'll be fine. Really, the star of the show here is the slides. Here in this first category, where we talk about the approach to development at Midtown, what we're really hearing in the community comments that really propels these guidance points forward is that the development should be community driven and equitable. This will likely require updating the existing city policies, city plans, and possibly even the creation of brand new ones. As we look into the details of this approach and we think about what assessing and updating these existing plans are, the master plan, one of the things that we heard a lot was how we envision transportation and multimodal networks within the campus and holistically throughout the city. What does a pedestrian-friendly transit system that emphasizes that de-emphasizes the use of cars and car-dependent transportation, and especially through a lens of mobility justice. There were a lot of comments that really emphasized the challenges for folks who may have disabilities of a variety of kinds. Certainly, we also know that even just walking from one part of town to another with a stroller can be pretty challenging. The other thing that we heard about development is that Midtown should be community driven, so that there is a nonprofit collective of community actors and organizations that will continue to advocate and advance the community benefit recommendations. This is work that will continue years, even decades down in through the life of the project itself, and that community members should have a role in the RFP process and the way that these proposals are gathered and analyzed by the community, and that parcels of the campus should be reserved for a community land trust where residents and tenants have a more democratic say in the operation of those buildings. In that next category, we see the vision. What is the equitable, sustainable, and health promoting future of the campus? How can we develop campus in a way that also has access for all ages, identities, and abilities? We heard a lot about making sure that Midtown is a place for youth and families, where youth and families feel welcome, that centers schools, educational opportunities, training developments in a way that is really intergenerational. That recreation be accessible, recreation opportunities. We heard a lot about sliding scale, pay what you can to make these activities much more accessible to a wider section of the community, and that we should be mindful of the social indicators of health as we do this development, the way that public spaces, transportation, and quality air, quality water, being mindful of how we use these precious natural resources really do have greater impact on some of those intangible health qualities and quality of life. And that we use existing tools like the health impact and equity impact assessments as we consider the decision making to help us as we also examine those social indicators of health. Sustainable development was also a big part of the responses and suggestions about how do we make sure that as we face climate change, that we are really building for long-term sustainability in the development of the buildings and walkable and open spaces, that we should be setting ambitious goals and standards, not just to what is the current caps or limits, that we should really be thinking long-term. And how do we also build infrastructure to be resilient, climate resilient, knowing that we are in a future that it will be here sooner rather than later, allowing for solar and renewable energy sources across Midtown. Here is a kind of a sample quote from someone who responded to the survey. Yo quiero ver más plantas y más recycling bins para salvar nuestro planeta, más jardines y más centros de ayuda de inmigrantes y centros de arte. This statement, I want to see more plants, more recycling bins in order to save our planet, more gardens, and more help centers for immigrants and art centers. This really captures the kind of holistic, wide-ranging vision for the campus. Which segues nicely into how we envision support for our local community. This bucket, this category, really emphasized access to economic opportunity and housing stability. When we look at the local economic development of support, one of the overwhelming themes was that locals really want to see Midtown developed for the local community, that really emphasizes how can we recontribute, reinvest in our communities in a way that is self-sustaining of our community. How do we incentivize and support local business? When folks were mentioning, let's say, healthy foods, they mentioned community gardens, community farms, farmers markets, more than chain or block or big box grocery stores, for example. This was also seen as a way to reinvigorate workforce training programs. How do we create educational pipelines from the surrounding schools and vocational training so that we can really support the local workforce and economy? I would love for there to be more resources available at a sliding scale: the arts, education, jobs, and community building. In the housing affordability topic, there were lots of comments about the increasing challenges of affordability across a variety of income levels, not just what HUD would define as low income housing. There was a lot of conversation and statements in the survey responses about how do we make it easier for working class folks in Santa Fe, again, across all variety of workforce sectors. How do we make not just rental a possibility, but home ownership a possibility? How do we really envision and plan for that kind of growth in that campus? Many of these households are essential workers or wage earners, or are, again, kind of at the 120, 150 average median income. How do we also make sure that the housing is accessible across generations for community cohesion, so that these are intergenerational and interfamily spaces that really support that type of community building, so that families feel safe, so that all members of the community feel like they belong and are a part of, this vibrant area. As folks shared their vision for what life at Midtown is going to look like on a daily basis, there was a lot of diversity and a lot of inclusivity of a variety of arts and culture programming and community-driven events. A lot of folks described a need and a desire for robust community services co-located on the campus. So this was, there was suggestions to leverage the use of existing buildings and dorms to establish community services, to make sure that those community services are not temporary, that they are, kind of a social hub, a social services hub for all of the residents in that area. And to really keep these for the, kind of the daily use city and government services. These are things like building permits, and to keep maybe more of the official core functions of the city in downtown perhaps, but certainly there was a vision of having city and governmental hubs and social services. Arts and culture programming was also similarly seen as how do we make it inclusive of all folks, all ages, across income levels? How do we create sliding scale galleries and businesses for folks at all income levels in order to really create a greater sense of community? How do we also recognize our Indigenous communities? There was a lot of feedback to incorporate powwow grounds into the space, and also a strong desire to maintain the Garson and the Fogelson Library. There was also a strong desire by survey responders to continue using the Midtown facilities for filmmaking and the existing arts programs. But again, to really consider that as a local economic opportunity. How do we use those spaces again for education and vocational training, employment pipelines of that kind? And how do we also celebrate food and culinary arts? Bring our community together? How do we integrate food offerings? How do we use the existing cafeterias? How do we intentionally develop spaces for food trucks, maybe more markets, coffee shops, and other restaurants in the surrounding areas as well?
Thank
So
you
the
so much.
big, oh, you got
Go
this?
ahead.
Okay, thank you.
I'm
Take it
not
away.
sure. Sorry. Yes. So how do we get to this point, to this vision, to all of the community spaces, opportunities, and vibrancy that people want to see at Midtown? Well, of course, there's the who. That's you, the governing body. They're the Midtown engagement partners that I'll tell you are committed and dedicated to these communities and to the development of this space for the long term, as are all of the city departments and staff that will, I'm sure, be allocated some parts of this responsibility. We kind of tried to map some of the guidance to city departments, and we see that there's probably every department. And what we're offering is this guidance, the community outreach and input. Guidance also from the staff. Staff have been along with us through this process for a year and a half now, especially Alexandra Ladd, Lee Logston, Liz Camacho, every planning director, Noah Burke, Eli Isaacson, and of course, Daniel Hernandez as project manager. And we see there's a lot of policy review and development to happen. And of course, as we mentioned, we submitted our draft report, the 50%, on February 1st. And our final report is due at the end of this month when the contract between the city and UNM ends, but it is definitely not the end of this process and the commitment of all the Midtown engagement partners, the staff, et cetera, going forward. Thank you all so much. We're ready for our questions. And we just want to make sure, if you want something, please feel free to contact us at unmdpac@unm.edu. Thank you.
Sorry, there was the unmute button. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work. And it's really exciting to start to see all this information culminate. Any questions from the committee? No, we got a quiet bunch tonight. Okay, well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here and to continue to synthesize all the information that you got. I know you had a lot of events, a lot of outreach, and it's really wonderful to see these themes coming forward, and looking forward to how they will continue to really inform us as we make these decisions and we come to these points of really starting to move forward with Midtown. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, Chair Cassett. And I just have to say, we actually have questions for you.
Oh. Go ahead.
As the committee, as you may recall, that the beginning of our presentation about the guidance, we have these other factors. So you saw, let me see there. So what we provided today was this high level of just kind of community goals and the characteristics of development that we heard that people want to see at Midtown. But as we said, we also want rationale, the public input, the context, and your expertise and experience in this community, as well as examples of promising policy or practices. So our question really is, what did you hear or see that resonates for you? What do you see as, what opportunities do you see to help reach these goals? What's existing in policy? What's existing in your experience? What do you know from your community that either to correct what we think we heard or to actually enlarge our understanding?
Are there any members of the committee that would like to respond at this time?
Seems like nobody wants to respond, but I will. I mean, I actually think these questions are important for staff because we are given information and we're not in the day-to-day grind, if you will. And so I guess a lot of these, what resonated from the community outreach is what people have been saying but haven't been heard. So I guess I'm just curious about how staff still seems to be able to integrate this in the actual like redevelopment process. And these ideas that how they fold in, especially if they're not necessarily related to, how would I describe it? Having a financial return, at least in their words. And so I'm just curious how staff sees the integration and our consultants, because this was a lot of work and a lot of feedback that we've been waiting for. We took time to make sure we did it right this time. And so I'm just wondering, how do great ideas, especially ones that we've never tried, and we should try new approaches, especially with like community land trusts, how do we put those into action? And I guess I want to hear from staff because I'm unsure. Every time I see this, I go, great. And then I see our plans and how we want to move forward with these different master plan elements. And then I still feel like there's a disconnect. I don't know if anyone else feels that way when you see this. I want to see how they are integrated in reality, because there's a lot of moving parts with the redevelopment, and there's different time periods things will occur, but it's like leaving open space and land for a powwow space. All of those resonate with me. I'm just curious how staff kind of operationalizes it.
I can,
Chair Daniel, I think you're going to answer. Go ahead.
yeah, I can take a stab. I mean, I work with staff and not all of them are here that I work with. Undoubtedly, the project takes many, many, many hours of my day, and then I try to be really focused when I'm dealing with staff who can make wise decisions on the information that we get. But I was so excited. I was texting Michael and Alexandra just now, like, this is fantastic. This just confirms, like I just push information out to the land development team, but this is exactly the kind of pieces of the puzzle that they're putting together in their land development plan. So there's a lot of information going and circulating right now. It's great confirmation to review and hear this presentation. So we'll see. I mean, the detail will unfold over the course of spring and summer, and you can be the sort of the moderator of whether we've captured these intentions, whether they're priorities, requirements, desires, whatever. But I think just seeing this tonight, it felt really good that we're on the right track. Lots of information, yes, lots of information constantly being shared. And we meet, I mean, these teams meet weekly for, if not an hour, 2 hours, and share information constantly. And there's crossover in those teams. We meet with the community development people, and we're scheduling a meeting so the land development interacts with them. So it's constant iteration as we move forward.
Thank you, Daniel. Councilwoman Villarreal, you still have the floor.
I didn't know if any other staff had some insight to this. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Daniel, but you didn't directly answer my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. What? Say it again, then. I'm sorry.
Madam Chair,
Well,
I'll try to answer your question if I can.
Please.
I think that it's a very good question, and I think that we have to be creative, innovative, and pragmatic at the same time. And so this is a part of a process, and a part of what Daniel has been doing in the last progress reports. We talk about the integration and alignment of community development and land development. And we've all asked, and we've had these questions here at the council about, don't do land development before you hear from community development. So we're now hearing from community development. So we need to take this input and then integrate it into what we're doing for land planning, knowing that just like when you and your partner or spouse try to remodel a house, one wants a blue couch, another wants a stone kitchen. You have to figure out what works ultimately. So that I think is going to be a part of this process. So we're now at that first phase, and we're looking at these new creative ideas and how it sort of will integrate from a community plan, looking at wants and needs into the land development plan, which pragmatically says we don't want the land to be zero. We have to have some value there because we have debt. So that I think hopefully answers part of your question, but it is an iterative process. And this is the first of many, I think, engagements we'll have around what the community is looking for in this next phase.
Thank you, Director Brown. I did see a hand up.
Yeah, Maria Sanchez Tucker has also raised her hand to respond. So go ahead, Maria.
And Lee Garcia's had his hand up for a while.
Yes, right now we're still answering the questions from Councilwoman Villarreal, and then we'll move to other committee members. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councilors. I'm going to put my library hat on right now. And in response to Daniel and Rich, and just looking at this guidance and these recommendations, all of this can be fed into the planning for an innovative public library space, incorporating community services with education and technology. And so I think it's really exciting to have this guidance as a precursor to the more engaged community work that we'll do with planning our library facility. So that's really exciting. So this is really important work. So that's a little bit how we can put it into a practical, next step for this initial phase of planning.
Thank you, Director Sanchez Tucker. I think I still have questions about the operationalizing it. And there's probably still some unknowns. There's things that like Fogelson Library, I think it's kind of clear that that particular aspect of it. But there's just other pieces that I'm just curious about. And I know in the presentation, there was a mention about how to utilize what could be utilizing it for City Hall, but not a City Hall specifically. It was for certain
Essential services. Mhm.
Yeah. And so how are we going about, we're going to do an analysis on that, right? Figure out what makes sense, because we already have some city services already there and some city, some of our offices. So it would be interesting. Yeah, I guess I'm just curious that that's still in the works. Is that correct, Director Brown? That piece?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that is true. I mean, I think it's a really incredibly innovative idea. And so that it came out today. I was very excited. The other thing I was excited about was talking about putting a market that's local in the space. One of the conversations I've been having is with the Food Depot about creating a nonprofit food store in the space. So these are all great ideas that are going to be sort of looked at as we get through the process. But again, that City Hall essential services idea will definitely be a part of that feasibility study that we spoke about in the resolution.
Thank you. Who will do that study? Or analysis?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I think Regina Wheeler is in charge of the study because she's a Public Works Director, and Public Works does buildings that are city owned or city leased. So that would be that's kind of their purview that they do.
Got it. All righty. I think that's all I have. Thank you all for your contributions and how much work you put into this, and getting your partners to respond and having a robust analysis, or just really looking at it holistically. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate young people in our Zoom boxes. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments and maybe a couple of questions, but I see how much work has gone into this process so far from its inception, and it's definitely mind-boggling, all the moving pieces that are involved here. I like to see when you get input from the community in terms of what they want to see there, and that's what you guys are gathering. It's obviously a very, very central piece of property, very, very valuable piece of property to the city. And how is the when I take a look at projects, you break it down, you take a look at the property itself and how it's going to be zoned, and how is this property going to be broken up? Obviously, it is city owned. Is there going to be pieces that are identified through a zoning map specifically as to what goes where on this in regards to a lot of the ideas that are being put forth?
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask Councilor Lee Garcia, I'm going to ask Mr. Hernandez to answer my question as he looks at land development.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So there is a land development plan that will be presented this month. Actually, we'll start going to committees and start introducing it. There won't be any approvals because we won't be asking for those until later in the summer, early fall. But yes, there will be a land plan that parcelizes the site. It'll show where infrastructure is and circulation patterns and density patterns on the site. So it really guides the physical development about what can be and where things can be built on the site. It'll also show all the existing buildings that we plan on preserving. So it'll be a fairly detailed map, and that will go to the Planning Commission and ultimately to the governing body for approval.
Thank you, because I think that's very important in regards to identifying, what goes where and how is it balanced. Where do we have a amphitheater, let's say for concerts, or a district where people can hang out? the housing area, where does it go? And I think those are just some of my concerns and questions. I do like the fact that there would be opportunity for people to travel there for assistance and offices, let's just say the immigrant community, and so on and so forth. And so I think those are all very important things to keep in mind. And I'm intrigued to see how this thing is, how it's evolving. And I do give kudos to you all for the amount of work that's happening with it, because it's large. It's a large project. It's a big, large, wide scope. So again, those are just my comments, and I do appreciate those answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Counselor. And I'll just finish up. I think that Mr. Hernandez actually just said one of the key phrases, which is that we're going to start seeing the land development plan come through committees. I believe April is the schedule that it starts coming through. Don't quote me on that, soon, but that approvals are not happening until the fall. And so that really does give us the opportunity for a very iterative process and a lot of conversation about how we continue to look at these discussions with land development. And I think at the same time, and this is something that I would ask of staff, is that as these presentations and conversations are coming through, that we are frequently linking and showing very explicitly how this links back to what we learned from community engagement, so that we can really see those connections, and that we do have the opportunity to fine tune them as we move through the process, because we do know that this is not going to necessarily be a straight line. I think the other thing that I've always, mentioned about being cautious with Midtown is that this is such a huge project, and it is a gem of an opportunity. I mean, this has been called a unicorn site and a unicorn opportunity for our city. It is not a silver bullet. And so I think that is one thing that I've always really, yes, will it do some work with housing? Absolutely. We are going to put housing on there. Is there opportunities for economic development? Is there opportunity for youth and family programming? Absolutely. Will it solve all of these, concerns and provide everything for the city of Santa Fe? No. And so for me, I think that is the other piece as a policymaker, is not just looking at, we want to do the best we can and develop Midtown to really provide all these opportunities. But what are the accompanying and the, what is the word that I'm looking for? The synergistic policies and developments and supports that we're doing throughout the community, knowing that Midtown is such an important site and is going to have an impact. But it does have to really work in synergy with the rest of the community as we're looking at what these needs are for Santa Fe, because a lot of what is being expressed here, these are not necessarily, some of them are, but they're not necessarily unique to Midtown. Sustainability is something that we talk about citywide. Housing is something that we talk about citywide. Activities, social gathering places, all of these things are not just unique to Midtown, even though Midtown does present us with an incredible opportunity to start addressing some of these needs in our city. So that is all I will add. Unless anybody else has any closing comments, we can go ahead and move on to consent. Thank you all so much for being here. And again, thank you so much for your work. I look forward to continuing to see you here and to speaking with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, let's move on to consent. The first item pulled I have is item C. And sorry, getting back to my agenda. This is request for approval of amendment number 1 to contract number 21-0335 with HomeWise to amend the scope of work and increase the amount of mortgage principal reduction assistance per household from $30,000 to $80,000. And we have Alexandra Ladd here for this item. And Councilor Garcia, you did pull this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question, I guess, in regards to the, it looks like it's targeting about 5 to 10 homeowners. Is that correct, Ms. Ladd?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, what this amendment does, it doesn't change the scope of work. It just raises the cap on the amount of assistance per household. Not every household will need more assistance, but for those who do, it will be available for them. So it just increases flexibility in the program. And we were pretty convinced that this is the time to do this, given how home values have increased by 30% or whatever the number is. It's insane over the last year. And so even buyers who have assistance can't close the gap between what they can afford and what they can buy. So this is an attempt to we've got lots of pipeline buyers ready to go. They're mortgage ready. They've completed home buyer training and counseling. They've worked hard to pay down their debt. They've improved their credit. They're ready to buy, and they just need a little bit more assistance in order to purchase the home. So each transaction is underwritten specific to that transaction. So it's a little hard to predict. It'll still, in other words, it's still the same number of households that will be assisted. It's just I can't predict to what degree for each future household.
So there's not a cap on how many people can be helped with this. It's just raising the amount that's available to them in their specific circumstances. Is that correct?
Councilor Garcia, that is correct. So there is, the only cap is that they can't receive more than what's being made available per household. But it, they may be able to spread it across more households or have deeper subsidy for fewer households. It just really depends on what the demand is.
So a follow-up question, I guess, with the increase in money, how does that affect the overall budgeted amount that goes to those that are in need of assistance every year? And so, because it's obviously a big amount, 30 to 80, and it's definitely needed because of the amount of houses are going for. And so how does that, does it constrict a little bit the amount of available funding that the fund has available to people?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, it doesn't increase the compensation at all. The overall contract amount stays the same. It's just allowing more flexibility in the amount that each household can receive.
Okay, but I think my question would have been is how does that affect, because obviously you'll be paying more money. How does it affect the fund and the money that's there available to people? So
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, the only impact it has is that if higher loans are made, the program, HomeWise's program, will run out of money sooner. But with this particular program, that's not likely to happen because it also generates program income. These loans pay off and they have to be used. The proceeds from those payoffs have to be used before the new money. So they've been generating so much revenue that they haven't been able to, from payoffs, they haven't been able to use their new money. So this is another reason to do this, is to help, because people are kind of stuck in the pipeline. They can't find a house to afford because they don't have enough assistance. So this is an attempt to kind of get some of those folks who are mortgage ready. They want to buy a home in Santa Fe. Let's get them a home in Santa Fe.
okay, I don't have any more questions. I thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Counselor. Are there any other questions from the committee? And if not, what are the wishes of the committee?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Can I please have a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Cassett,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alexandra. All right, moving on. The next I have pulled is item E, which is request for the approval of amendment number 1 to contract item number 21-0325 to decrease $9,396 from the original contract amount of $304,000 for the senior volunteer programs. Amended contract amount will equal $294,604 And this is from the State of New Mexico Aging and Long-Term Services. And Gino Rinaldi, hi Gino, is here to present. And Councilor Garcia, you pulled this item.
Thank you, Chair Cassett. I pulled this item so I can recuse myself as I work for the federal agency that hosts these volunteer programs. So sorry to keep you, Mr. Rinaldi, and I like your background photo. So I'm going to go ahead and step away for a moment.
Thank you so much, Councilor. We will text you when you can come back in, unless Alex knows how to do the cool thing to put you in another room. Oh, you're already gone. All right. Are there any other questions from members of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second by Lee Garcia.
Thank you so much. And can I please have a roll call, Ms. Martin?
Yes, from Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Cassette,
Yes.
motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gino and Anya, for being here. And
Great evening. Thank you.
thank you. Let's text Councilor.
I just got him, texted him.
Thank you. And we will wait just a moment for him to return. Okay, wonderful. Welcome back, Councilor Garcia. Moving on to item K, this is a request for approval of
Madam Chair, I have item F as pulled by Counselor.
Oh,
Michael.
yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, we did go to F. One moment, please. This is a request for approval of amendment number 1 to professional service agreement 21-0395 between the City of Santa Fe and Artful Life LLC for an extension of time pursuant to resolution 2021-56, amending the Culture, History, Art, Reconciliation, and Truth Chart. And Pauline Kamiyama, our Director of Santa Fe Arts and Culture Department, is here to present. Councilor Garcia, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Cassett. Thank you, Director Kamiyama, for being with us tonight. So just to make sure I'm understanding the time frame, we're extending the current contract by like 2 weeks because I think it was, I'm looking at the date it was signed by the mayor was in August 9th or something, and we're looking to the end of August.
Chair Cassett, Councilor Garcia, to clarify the contract, the due date on the contract was June 30th of this year. And to make it in alignment with the resolution for a full 12 months, that's why the contract's being amended to match.
Okay.
So they have the full 12 months.
Okay, great. Thank you. I saw those dates, and so thank you for helping to clarify that. In the memo, you had mentioned that this can be amended up to 4 times. I don't know where we're at in regards to what beyond this first year looks like. I think a lot of it relies upon, the final report. And I think, as you've probably noticed, we're halfway through this process. I've expressed some deep concerns through the process. Community members have expressed concerns, and I want to make sure that we are not getting ahead of ourselves in regards to extending any contracts before we receive any final product or final report. So are we planning on that, or is we just, okay?
Chair Cassett, Councilor Garcia, I put that clause in there as I had to get I had the CPO, Ms. Dunaway, was at first not willing to, or wasn't understanding the reason for the extension for the contract this early on. And so I just had to pull legal language. So the intention is that the contract ends at the end of August of this year, and their services with Artful Life will conclude at that point. And then from that point forward, with the governing bodies approval of any recommendations, the Arts and Culture Department and the city will go ahead and continue to carry on those recommendations.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for helping me. Just as it's, when we get into these contracts, it can sometimes be complicated. With that, I don't have any other questions, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Kamiyama. With that, motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? And if not, let's get a roll call.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Cassett,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we are moving on to item K. This is a request for approval of a budget adjustment resolution in the Arts and Culture Department in the amount of $300,000 to fund community gallery citywide exhibition and programming, arts education, cultural investment funding program, CIFP, and Culture Connects focus projects and programming. And Director Kamiyama is still with us. Thank you so much. Director Kamiyama, I pulled this item mostly because we had a conversation in finance, and of course, we are glad that you were taking some time off. But in order to cover a few of the high level topics, I believe that you are going to speak with the counselor who had some questions. There was a desire to hear a little bit more detail about these specific programs and the criteria for receiving the funding. So if you wouldn't mind going over that, that would be appreciated.
Chair Cassett, thank you for the opportunity. And again, I do apologize. I didn't time my time off accordingly.
Don't apologize. Vacation is important. You guys worked hard enough.
It was only a half day, but it was so much needed.
It's needed.
Just as a reminder, an overview of what happened in fiscal year 1920, the pandemic hit. The arts and culture budget was cut by 53% for fiscal year 2021. In fiscal year 1920, I was asked and directed by the finance department to find savings. So that meant I had to go to our grantees and ask for funding, unspent funding back by the end of April, anything that wasn't spent. So we recovered about 130,000 just from that. And it was heartbreaking to do. And as you remember, I cried during our budget hearings, and I'm gonna cry now again. What the supplemental budget will help us do is to get back to almost pre-pandemic levels of services. I have an amazing team. There's 3 of us. So the 3 of us have been juggling and tag teaming and getting things done. We cross-train. Everyone knows how to run a panel. Everyone knows how to put out a call. We do our own scheduling. We do it all. And I'm very grateful that the team has stepped up to be so proactive to support our cultural community. So these projects that I'm taking the opportunity to fund are actually things that we have done in the past as a department. And so I'm not sure and yes, there is a challenge to get these all implemented in 3 months. And so I did have a conversation with the director of finance to ensure that we would have assistance as needed for purchase orders, for contracts that would have to do. One of them, if it comes through, one of my proposals is to really look at contracting with a company who can help us either with visual reality or augmented reality component to enhance the city historian's GIS story map. So that would be the only thing that I anticipate would have to potentially, which would probably have to roll over until next fiscal year, because 3 months is a lot to develop something. All the other projects are things that we currently have done in our scope of work and things that we know will help our community citywide. So again, that it would be handled by 3 of us. We would use whatever procurement processes are in place, purchase vouchers, purchase orders, contracting as needed.
Thank you so much, Pauline. And you did answer what was going to be my second question. There was this discussion of what the impact would be if we had held it for another 2 weeks. And it does sound like it is going to be challenging getting it out on the timeline as is. And so thank you for sharing that information. And that was why we decided to move it forward. We did not feel comfortable holding it without gathering that information. So I appreciate that. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say that I so appreciate your passion that always comes through when you talk about your work. And we are just so lucky for that. So thank you for that. And thank you to your team. I know you guys work very hard. With that, I don't have any further questions. Does anybody else from the committee have any questions? And if not, what are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. May I please get a roll call?
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Cassett,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pauline. Thanks for being here. Good to see you. Okay, moving on to item P. This is the request for approval of a budget adjustment resolution in the accounting division of the finance department in the amount of $582,000 to fund audit preparation support for the on-time FY22 audit. And we have Ricky Bejarano, our accounting officer, here to present. And it looks like Mary McCoy is joining us as well, our finance director. Counselor Michael Garcia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Cassett, and thank you, Director McCoy and Mr. Bejarano. I just got a quick question for clarification, and I guess maybe it's a newbie question. So in the title and in the memo, the way it states it is $582,000 to fund preparation support for on-time fiscal year 22 audit. What is the on-time? Shouldn't it be late? I mean, that's where my clarification comes in, because it's mentioned in the title of the item as well as in the memo. And can you help expand on what we mean by on time?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, thank you for the question. An on-time audit is an audit that is submitted by the due date that the state auditor's office sets forward.
So wouldn't that be, we're not on time, or it would be late because the date was in December?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, we are late with the FY21 audit. Our goal with this additional assistance is to be on time with the FY22 audit.
Okay, sorry. I got a little confused there. Okay, thank you so much for helping with that. I really appreciate that. With that, no other questions. Thank you, Director McCoy. Thank you, Mr. Bejarano. Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can I please get a roll call?
Yes, Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Cassett,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. So that we are done with consent. We have no action items, no executive session. On to item 10, matters from staff. City Manager Blair did say that he was going to try to join us to provide an update on the incident from this afternoon. I'm not seeing him right now. Dr. Brown, are there any other updates at this time?
Madam Chair, members of the council, there are no updates from staff.
Okay, all right. I did text Mr. Blair, so we will see if he joins us in the next couple minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. Any matters from the committee? And there we go. Here's John. We're going to backtrack and go back to matters from staff. And Mr. Blair, thank you so much for joining us. Floor is yours.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. Hi, everybody. Mayor Weber and Director Ochoa and myself are here on site with our city clerk as well, who's been doing double duty today as our point of contact with the media. Don't have a lot more information beyond what was in the press release that went out earlier today that we can share. As I understand it, the state police have completed their investigation of the crime scene. They had taken over control of the scene earlier today. And about 10-15 minutes ago, city fire and county fire were able to get to the site of the actual accidents to extricate the two people who have died from the scene of the crime. As we understand it, there are numerous accident sites. Nothing that I can confirm right now or am in a position to share, but the police have been working hard all day. City fire, county fire, Santa Fe police, I know that county police or county sheriff's office have done a great service today in helping take some pressure off our team. State police has done an excellent job. So we really, our law enforcement folks have stepped up under a time of real duress and stress for them. Have had the chance to speak with some of the police officers on the scene. For some, they didn't know the officer who died. Some do. and they're working through a grieving process right now. And so they just will continue to need our love and support. I do understand that the investigation is ongoing. I think, frankly, in full candor, I think it's a little more complicated than we thought it might have been earlier in the day. But we're hopeful that there may be a press conference of some sort in the next half hour to hour that will shed a little bit more light on the situation. I'm sure those will probably happen for a number of days going forward. We also know as well that there will be an official transport for the officer from the scene here to Albuquerque that will likely take place shortly tonight, and that there have been a number of officers who have volunteered their time to come up to help escort the fallen officer down to Albuquerque. So, Councilor Chairwoman, that's what I know right now. If we know more tonight, we'll get more information out tonight, probably via email and press release. But I'm grateful that you gave us a little bit of time here to let you know what we're doing here. And I'm happy to stand for any questions that you or anybody has.
Thank you so much, City Manager Blair, and thank you for taking the time to provide us with the update. And I really do want to thank all of our public safety officials and our law enforcement officers from the county and the city and the state and city and county fire who have really stepped in to all pull together today. Are there any questions from members of the committee at this time for Mr. Blair? Okay, thank you again so much. And I'm sure that we will hear from you soon with further updates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you. Thank you, councilors. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we will move back to item 11, matters from the committee. Are there any matters from any members of the committee at this time?
No matters. I just again want to, send my prayers to the families and for the fallen officer and for our whole community. I mean, it's such a tragic turn of events and can turn in just a snap of a finger. And so we all just have to hug our loved ones and pray for each other. So that was just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Matters from Chair, I have no matters. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, March 16th, and at 6:17, our meeting is adjourned.